be doing this more in the evenings than during the day, but I'm in the truck so much lately, so I don't know when is really the right time to do it. But anyways, I will figure something out for all of you, and whoever is I see people are starting to pop in. To all of you, I just want to say good morning and an amazing morning to all of you. I hope you enjoyed last night. I hope it was a positive experience. I hope your day was positive. I hope everything is great. And Cheryl, good morning. And D2, I guess you were there in the chat before I went live. Good morning, and to PEI and Sonia and all of you. I'm late. Good morning. Paula. Yeah, Paula's going to lose some points. She's late. She's going to get docked. Paula, thank you so much for coming to hang out and spend some time. I hope you have your coffee with you. And, this whole premise of what I'm trying to do with this platform is all about, just very simply, I just want us to focus on acknowledging the freedoms that we have, and we're going to work together to expanding those freedoms in the future and get everybody kind of aware of some of the things that were going on and are going on in the world, and that's it. And that's why I suggest all of you have a cup of freedom with you, so we can, maybe we'll engage in a similar a similar start together where we all kind of sit back and acknowledge and think about for 10, 20 seconds all the amazing things that are happening in our lives, despite all the noise and whatever. The fact that we're all here together. So many of you, I'm familiar with your names now, and there's more and more people, new people coming in, which I really appreciate. And what's better way to celebrate and acknowledge freedom than all of us having a cup of freedom and engaging in, Scott Adams does this simultaneous sip. And it's really important, I think, from bringing us all together. It's kind of like when you go to an event and cheers and you all drink together. Well, maybe we should be doing something together, but it's all around freedom and our love of coffee, except for Tao. Tao doesn't love coffee. Oh, before we do that, I got to go and let Tao know that I am currently live. The checklist of things I got to do before I start. Every time I have technical issues, something happens, and, well, there you go. So let me just grab this latest tweet here. For those of you who are in the Discord, you're going to see an everyone ping right now to all of you, just so I can let all of you know together. And that's one of the benefits of being in the Discord if you want to join the chats. Let me just put live now and exclamation mark, because that's important. And it's just a good tool for letting everybody know when things are happening, because I've had a lot of people saying, "Oh, when are you going live? When are you doing stuff?" and whatever. And it's a good vehicle to do it. But also, much like you guys are all in the chats and the comments here, the Discord chat, the main one is called the Donut Shop. How Canadian is that? For everybody to continue sharing information and reaching out and getting to know each other and whatever. So on that thought, I think what we should do is engage in our first freedom sip together. So grab your coffee, much like, let me get the people. Oh, no, wait, I'm trying to. It's my phone is all in Spanish now, so I'm trying to do something on my phone. I got to think an extra second. And estamos haciendo tu seguras que okay. So I think this is a good time for us all to do our equivalent of cheers and celebrating freedom by getting a cup of freedom. And on the count of 3, we all go together, and we together enjoy the taste and the smell of freedom and how much better things are going to get. So 1, 2, 3. Take a sip. Doesn't that feel good? Doesn't it feel good? Doesn't that feel awesome? Paula, did you miss it? Sorry. Good morning. I was actually looking up vacation destinations in El Salvador. Oh, interesting. I was actually just looking at tickets, ticket prices for El Salvador. I got to figure out a way to get there, hopefully before the summer, because a lot of people in El Salvador who've been asking me to, since the convoy, to telling me I got to come down and hang out and all that sort of stuff. And I would like to see El Zonte, and so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But if you're going to go to, Risa, if you're going to go to El Salvador, we should talk. And you should join tonight the Twitter space with Davo, myself, and Andrea. The two of them are hosting and co-hosting. About El Salvador. That's what we're going to be talking tonight. It's exclusively in Spanish. I'm going to try not to do any Spanglish. And this is what we were trying to do on Wednesday, but things didn't work out. There was problems. I was crossing the border, whatever. So we're going to be doing this space and discussing not only the changes in El Salvador, because I think El Salvador has a key to some stuff, which I'm going to be discussing today, but also the fact that Bitcoin is significant in El Salvador. Bitcoin was significant in the Freedom Convoy. It was the only money that was able to get en masse into the hands of the truckers. And I think all of those are salient points that are tangential to one another. And those are things that we need to get out on the radars of people throughout Latin America, which is where Andres and Marcela is. They're both in Chile. There was a bunch of people last time I was there. They were from Chile and Colombia, I think were the two main countries the last time we did it. And in Chile, they're not really aware of Bitcoin. So I think the Freedom Convoy serves as a good example as to why Bitcoin and self-sovereignty from a monetary standpoint is really important. Yes, I did. I was making coffee. I got in from the barn. Okay, thank you, Paula. You're awesome. And here is Andrea. Cheers to freedom. Salud. Salud a la libertad. Is that how you say it? Salud a la libertad. Risa, my Spanish is a bit rusty. I will ask my mom to translate. No, just get your mom to teach you. Come on. Oh, yeah, Andrea. It's Chile, not Chile. It's Chile, like the restaurants, Chili's, right? All right, so I'm glad many of you were here last night. I hope you enjoyed it. It was, for the first time in a long time, I'm actually streaming to my personal Instagram, just because we can all hope that TikTok will be put into pastures and will be banned, the Chinese spyware. So many of those who are on TikTok will likely migrate back over to Instagram, so I hope. So anyways, somebody says, your ability to articulate with precision is why you're the face of this. Oh, thank you. Aside from being incredibly handsome. Well, listen, what do you give me, a 7? A 7, 6? I don't know. Do you see all of the Americas finding subfractions that can relate? Subfactions. You mean like not competing, but aligned groups that operate independently? Yes. If that's what you're asking, 100%. I think much like the Freedom Convoy, it was a decentralized movement because many people have grievances that are not in line with one another, but we all have overall a common grievance, which is about freedom and the ability to, not have our government intrude in our bedrooms and in our lives and all that sort of stuff. So I think from that perspective, yes. And there are, other groups that are doing freedom movements, some of them that I'm cool to engage with, and other ones I'm like, it's a little bit too, I can see there's the political swamp that's invaded that group. There's a few of them like that. And I don't want to get involved in anything where the political swamp is there, using it to try to make anybody who's a pro-freedom person make look bad, which is a very common strategy that's used. So, okay, please stop sucking up. Sucking up to who? Who's sucking up? Not me. I love this name, Murato McKenzie. Yeah, the two guys on Veterans for Freedoms. Both of them are paid. Both of them are literally feds that call everybody else feds. They're both We're employed by the Canadian military, so the federal government, they both take pensions from the federal government, but call everybody else feds. Whatever. China has conquered Latin America and Africa with infrastructure projects. Yes and no. It is. We have to remember how big the world is. I remember being down in Mexico many times because I used to date somebody for many, many years who was Mexican. And you could see the signs of China getting involved, but boy, there was a lot of pushback from Mexicans. Mexicans are very nationalistic, as are most Latin American countries. So I don't think they were having such a good they weren't having such a good go at it in Latin America. Prairie Sun, good morning on Locals. Good morning too. And Prairie Sun, who is on Locals, because you're on Locals, you can share memes, graphics, any sort of charts or whatever. Throw it up in the chat, right? Like that's why the Locals platform is so powerful. On Locals, sucking up, saying you're handsome. Well, okay, all right, I'm ugly. I guess I'm, whatever, I'm fine. Listen, I am who I am. And I need to take off the usual 20 pounds that I put on this winter. And this winter is even harder because of my ankles. I can't, normally I would be now on the treadmill regularly getting ready for summer, but that's a problem. IMF is keeping Latin America and Africa hostage. Yes, we'll get into that in a second. Okay. So, last thing to say before I start, this wonderful book, which is, unfortunately you get the mirror effect on Instagram, is finally available in the Apple bookstore. So you can now get it on Amazon. I'm trying to think, what is it? It's Amazon, Kobo, Etsy, and Apple Books as of yesterday. If you just go to honkingforfreedom.com, any link that it's available will be available there. The next project for this is the audiobook, and I will be reading the audiobook, but that's why it's going to take so much time. But I was trying to figure out when's a good timeline to do the audiobook, when to fit it in, and all the things around my life has made it quite difficult to sit down for hours at a time to record. I've set up the infrastructure, it's just a matter of recording, and then packaging and uploading, all that sort of stuff. So I think I might coordinate this with either Bitcoin Canada, where I've been asked to be a keynote speaker in June, or at the end of June for this massive music festival in New England that a number of wonderful people are in the U.S. who supported us and support freedom are working on a massive 4-day music festival that I will be a part of and participate in, along with some Canadian and hopefully American truckers as well. So I'm either the audiobook, I think I'm gonna line it up with those two things, and I'll see what I can do. Paula, an amazing book, read it. Oh, well, thank you, awesome. What is your favorite part of Honking for Freedom? What did you like most about it? I'm always curious what people's feedback is. Surveillance battles, Fred of political affiliations is a dream. That's amazing. Well, thank you very much. Okay, so we're on Apple Books. And and the other thing I just jotted down, like yesterday when we talked about who sabotaged the Freedom Convoy, and I brought up the point that, you remember when I first mentioned this a few months ago, and, I just asked the question, was the Freedom Convoy sabotage? And people were like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. The police came in and all that sort of stuff. And now, as the wheel of time has spun about a year of me talking about it, and now other people becoming aware of what was actually going on behind the scenes and what I and others were dealing with during the Freedom Convoy. Yes, it was as crazy as it seems, if even worse. It was constant adrenaline, but it's now people seem to be believing the overwhelming amount of evidence to show that we were intentionally sabotaged by the swamp, which I'm labeling, and thanks to what's it called, Steven Crowder. I'm adopting some of his branding for Big Con Canada Inc. That's the swamp that sabotaged the convoy. And you know what's very interesting? So it's a year, and now people are starting to realize, oh, wait, what Dichter was saying the entire time was true. And, oh, they had a communication strategy to smear Dichter, utilizing all these YouTube channels. So even that didn't work. And you know what it reminds me of? It parallels exactly, in my mind, to the cerveza sickness, right? How long did it take? Everybody, when you tell people, oh, it's being manipulated for political gain, and it's not as bad as they indicate, and all that sort of stuff, and it mainly targets, the elderly, well, all that sort of stuff. And oh no, that's not true. There's no way. They reacted the same way as when I explained that when I asked if the convoy was sabotaged. And now here we are. It's becoming mainstream that that everything around the cerveza sickness was at the very least manipulated, and lots of lies around it. So it's interesting to see how those two things parallel and overlap exactly the same thing. So the swamp lied to you about the cerveza sickness. Again, I'm on YouTube. That's why I say that. And they also lied to you about the Freedom Convoy with, what we called moving the trucks, LOL. That's how I described it during the thing. And they now kind of retroactively tried to rewrite history about, the deal, which never was, right? So it's a very large swamp, and you're not in it. And be thankful you're not in it. They tried to drag me into that swamp, but I said, no, thank you. Adrenaline is good. That's natural high. Provides clarity in the face of oppressive adversity. This is from Instagram. Yes, and I got to tell you, it was the fact that I try to always maintain this positive frame. And as what's his name, the guy from the National Telegraph, Boardman, says, Ben with his hippity dippity stuff, because he's negative on a lot of stuff. I'm not. That was, I think, probably my strongest asset with a lot of the people, because a lot of people were freaking out all the time. And I remember having many, one-on-one conversations, many people saying, hey, relax, it's going to work out, just give it time, don't get all, wrapped up in it, we'll get through this together, the sky is not going to fall tomorrow, sort of thing. So, Paula says, oh my God, the whole book was very spot on. This book, I'll have to hold it on. The whole book was very spot on and gave me a very good look into the back row of people that were enjoying enjoy the scenes. A definite whirlwind. Whirlwind is an understatement. It was pretty wild, but anyways, congratulations. I'm reading it. Great book. I'm slow to read. That's okay. However, really enjoying it. Well, thank you very much. Cheers, salud in Spanish. Muy bien, a ti también. And Andrea, well, I'm going to say this in English because this is an English broadcast, but the team that helped me put this together are Venezuelan, and they all live, I think all of them minus one, if I'm not mistaken, live in Panama. And all of this was, we didn't have a means to exchange and all that sort of stuff. Because, transferring money into Latin America is a pain in the ass. So we utilized Bitcoin for all of this, for their invoice. And they were strong supporters of the Freedom Convoy. So when they were connected with me, and then they realized who I was, like, oh my God, we were watching the convoy the entire time. They're like, oh yeah, that's you. I'm like, yeah, that was me. So they were very, very excited to help put this together. So we've discussed maybe after 2023, I'm not sure, because the book hopefully has longevity. I think it does. I don't think it's going to stale date. We'll be doing it in other languages. We'll start with Spanish. And it's part of why I want to do these Twitter spaces in Spanish to practice, so I can do the read of the book in Spanish as well. I think the author should always try to be the narrator as much as possible. So I'll try to do it in both languages. I don't know if I will. But anyways, it is what it is. Glad your credit. Glad you credit others in the book. Yeah. It helps the future fighter. It helps the future fighters do research and form their own ideology and accordingly. Yeah, like if I'm gonna, I'll I'll pat myself on the back. Well, I'm not pat. Somebody gave me a nice compliment, and I'm gonna regurgitate that compliment. Somebody I know I'm very close with was reading the book, family member, and read it, and called me up in the middle of reading it and said, I just got to tell you something. I give you a lot of credit. I'm like, why? And he said, because most people who would be in that position, the position you were in, when they go out and write their book, they're going to make it all about them, that it's just about them. He said, but you told everybody else, you told other people's stories as well. And he actually said, unknowing that Bridget and I, were we really talking a lot then yet? I think we were just starting to talk, actually. He said, for example, I didn't know who this Bridget Belton person was and that she started this convoy with some other truckers. Like, I had no idea. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have known that. And he said, I didn't know how Tamara got a hold of you. I didn't know so many other things that went on. And I said, yeah, because, I don't know. It's important to give a voice to everybody because this was many of us coming together. And but there's some other people who just seem to make it about themselves because they're psychopaths. But I'm not. And I'm glad that other people, were, I guess, positively affected emotionally by that I didn't ignore them and I didn't forget them. And that's intentional. Everybody deserves their credit, and I know it was a passionate moment for so many people. These concepts are routine in freedom, as the title states. This is universally appealing. Well, thank you. I wanted it to be as the thing is, I didn't want us to. I see this all the time in all these activist groups. By the way, I'm not an activist. I hate that term. I'm just a guy who's been entrepreneurial his whole life and somehow got swept into this. I wanted this book not to be what I often see, which is preaching to the choir, always saying the same thing, talking to ourselves. I wanted this to be appealing to people who maybe didn't understand the Freedom Convoy. So those of you who could read it and come away with a positive emotional experience, but then also say, hey, you know what, liberal, progressive, whatever, or non-political relative, I want to share this book with them so they understand it as well. So it should be digestible to those people. It won't be digestible to the hardcore communists, but the ideologically subverted will never open up their minds to new ideas. But those who will, I hope it's successful, and that's what I'm going for the long term, and that's why I try to promote the book, and hopefully it becomes something of a benefit to you and all of us. Okay, so El Salvador. Did I say it right, Andrea? Mi acento está bien en español? El Salvador? El Salvador, or El Salvador in Spanish. Can you select a passage and run a discussion in a feed? I have no idea what that means, but if you want, you can DM me, and I'll send you a link to the Discord where it's still in beta, but there's a bunch of people now joining and sharing information and ideas and talking to each other. And it's not politically, partisan to one side. Yes, I'm more conservative, but I want to talk to people who think differently. Well, I'm conservative on some issues. Let's say I'm very libertarian, but I want to make a space for everybody, left, right, progressive, libertarian, whatever, not politically affiliated, but who will be respectful of one another and talk and support each other. Maybe initiatives we may not be aligned with, but support people's right to protest and not in protest, to have their voice heard, right? So that's what's... so send me a DM, and when we're done this, I'll send you a link to the Discord. Cheryl, I love the Discord group. Well, awesome. It's still really small. Because the first thing we need to get moderators, which is what we're working towards, and moderators who are going to be fair. All we want to avoid is people who are connected to the swamp coming in, or people who just get involved and make it a negative experience for everything. Having these sort of discussions where we disagree on things that are fundamental to our core value can be very impassioned discussions. And it's very easy to slip into anger. And this is what we want the moderators to, not to censor. We want them there just to, hey, when people are getting just a little bit upset about a discussion, just to say, hey, listen, let's end this conversation now and come back in 24 hours, 48 hours. Just cool down. And and I don't think that will happen because we've set up a left-wing room, a right-wing room, and an I don't know room, so everybody can bounce back and forth to each other's rooms. So if you're a liberal who wants to talk to conservatives without trolling, we can joke a little bit, but be respectful, then you can do so. And if you're a conservative and you want to engage with liberals who are well-minded, then you can go into the liberal room and vice versa, right? Tao says, not so much traditional moderators, but these with the time and energy to lead by example. Yeah, that's a good example. That's a good description of what we're looking for, and we'll get it. There's somebody I know from TikTok who is definitely on the left side, but she was very supportive. She's very thoughtful. She considers the other side even when she doesn't agree with. There's a couple of them. I've invited one of them in. And those are the type of people we want. We want everybody. Everyone should talk to everyone. Anyone who doesn't understand how to be a human. Well, I mean, that might be a little hyperbolic, but I get your point. I understand what you're trying to say, and I don't entirely disagree. So, anyways. Okay, I'm going to follow you for those awesome comments, by the way. All right, so I want to get into, and by the way, I'm going to make fun of liberals a little bit here, but I think it's really the liberal swamp and the liberal media. It's not liberal individuals that I'll be addressing here, but, just that. Marato and McKenzie, I love that name is with this comment. Big Con Canada and the JCCF lawyers went out because you don't have political affiliations, want you out because you don't have political affiliation with the apparatus. Eva follows the same ideology of George Soros. Oh, okay. And Henry Kissinger, look at her twit. I didn't know that. Okay, well. Some other questions about her that have come up in the past couple of weeks, but those are her problems. But yeah, listen, I can't be put into a bubble. And the big threat that I have is what happens if more and more of you start understanding or accepting factually what is verifiable and true, what happened during the convoy, that the entire swamp is bad, and what happens if we all start to get together and talk to one another. Well, that's a threat to the political establishment, and I don't care. I really don't. I want us all to be good to one another. So can we also disassociate freedom from the term liberal? In the U.S., the two terms are often conflated, especially when it's seen through the anti-government Big Brother lens. Interesting comment. I discussed this last night in the stream, but that wasn't on Instagram. One of the problems we have, and this really tends to come from right-wing alternative media, you see this a lot in both Canada and the United States, where, and listen, every ideology has its problems, and every ideology is sometimes right? But what they do is they conflate liberal and progressive, and that's part of the problem. They complain that how these liberals are getting are crazy, but at the same time they're grouping actual classical liberals with people who are progressive or even extreme communists and putting them into one basket. Well, okay, so stop doing that, and then maybe the liberals will start open up and talking a little bit more. You see somebody like Bill Maher is still on the journey, and Dave Rubin just did another fabulous video outlining that in the past couple of days, that he's liberal, there's no question, they call him maybe center left, like reasonable left. I might disagree with him on a lot of things, but reasonable. But then when it comes to election time, he does if you vote for Republicans, it's our democracy is ending. So they're so disjointed. But I think it's just a process, and it takes time, right? Have you heard about the climate change convoy that is coming to Ottawa? Oh, my God. Stop with the convoys. In April, they're refusing to leave until the demands are met. What demands? What demands? I wonder if blackface grouper will beat out of them and trample them with horses. Well, my guess is that sounds like that is an op from Big Con Canada Inc. They've been trying to do everything they can to destroy the legacy of the Freedom Convoy, and that would be a good way to do it. So this is how the swamp operates, right? They position people around messaging, they target them, they utilize them to destroy movements so they can coalesce control around themselves. So I don't know where that's coming from, but I would advise them not to do that. Screw them, you're raw. A voice that's with the people and share. I want to meet more leaders in despotic parts of North America that will lead as you do. Well, I don't know if I'm leading. I'm just talking, right? But thank you. That's very sweet of you. No, these freaks are NDP and Green Party supporters. Oh, so the NDP and Green Party supporters going. Oh my God. What a mess! Oh my God! All right. Well, thank you, Lisa. I don't imagine there's many NDPers or Green Party people that drive big rigs. So right away, there's something wrong. You know, when I go in my truck, I spend $1,500 a day. Well, no, 2 days for a trip and there and back. It's $1,500 on fuel. Like I did last week when I went to Boston, and I had 150 liters of fuel left when I got back. That's not climate people driving trucks. So there's something up. Sounds like another setup from big. Okay, so let's get into El Salvador, because we're already running my mouth too long here. So, Nayib Bukele is the president of El Salvador. I think many people who are on Twitter, you already will know that. And he is the most popular world leader in the world within his country. His approval rating had dipped down to 86% when they started smearing him. But now he's back up to 95%. And these are Saddam Hussein type numbers, but these are verified outside of El Salvador. These are not the government numbers. These are third-party organizations that are collecting the data and doing all the research. So one of the things that's made him most popular is he has obliterated MS-13 and the 18th Street gangs that started in Los Angeles, were thrown out of the U.S., went back to El Salvador, and they've done nothing but torment the people of El Salvador now for 30 years. So what he's done is he's just gone full force, brutal force against them to mass arrest all of them. There's 63,000 of them that have been arrested. That's the entire apparatus of both gangs. Now, I don't want to get too gruesome because I like this to be positive, but we are talking about the most barbaric people on the planet, people who mutilate bodies of children, who extort, the pobres, the kids on the street that sell DVDs and sell chiclets and stuff like that. They also had to pay dues to the gangs, and if they didn't, then they get executed. They're well known for playing soccer with decapitated heads of their victims. That's the type of savagery that we're dealing with. They're just no longer human at that point. They're so poisoned. And so what he's done, and they've been there was a couple of stories, many stories I've heard. I don't get too gruesome, but you get the idea. This is really brutal crap that's happening. That has been happening for 30 years in El Salvador. And I can sympathize because when I moved to Colombia, it was about 10 years after Escobar was, because once Escobar was out, then there was the Cali cartel and the drug wars continued on. So it was only safe for a few years when I moved to Colombia the first time. Yeah, they have a huge network thanks to social media. Well, that's everybody, right? Everybody's able to expand with telecommunications and the internet and social media. But yeah, 100%. The irony, they want climate change, and they are driving across the country in cars that use gas. Yeah, well, that's just the way it usually is. So he's wiped out all of MS-13 and the 18th Street Gang. That's made him the most approved of president in the world. Many years he created one party. That part, the swamp colluded to deregister his party. He had to go to another party and all that sort of stuff. Okay, this is what happens when the political establishment is always left in charge. Eventually, it's going to trend towards groupthink, corruption, and they're going to alienate themselves separate from the population. And then what do? They try to smear everybody who's not in their group as a populist movement. That's what we're dealing with today. And in Bukele's case as well, he also got targeted by the IMF and the World Bank. And so his solution was, you know what? I don't need you. I'm going to use Bitcoin. We can't print dollars because they were a dollarized nation. So figured, okay, we'll use Bitcoin and we'll go from 70% of the country not having a bank account to 100% of the country having a bank account. That's why I love Bitcoin. There's something in it for everybody. It's for poor people, wealthy people, people in the developed world, and people in the developing world. It has something for everybody because freedom is for everybody, and that's what Bitcoin tries to be. Everyone keeps telling me about him at random. Makes me want to fly fish to see him. He's. I've spoken with somebody in the El Salvadorian government. Brilliant guy, really, really smart and fascinating background and history. Who's one of the leads on attacking MS-13. Remember, for 30 years in El Salvador, it was this tiny little country was the murder capital of the world. And you couldn't go out at night between 8:30 at night and 7, 8 in the morning. You couldn't go out, or the chances were you'd get killed. And I heard many of those stories from my friends when I lived in Colombia, telling me what they went through during the narcotraficante years, when they had a foothold over the country during the Escobar years. Was when it was worse. I have a friend whose brother was just shot at random coming home from school when his brother was, and it was a kid. He was young. He was not even a teenager at that point. And he was shot and killed. And everybody I know there has somebody. So Westerners, that complain, we've never really experienced the sort of hardship that they experience in many parts of Latin America. And this is what it leads to when you have weak leadership. When you have weak leadership, then that's what you get. This is what we will end up with, which is why I think what Bukele is doing is so important. And I'm going to give an example of weak leadership. And remember, I'm going to use an American example. For those of you who are on Instagram and on Locals, you'll hear this. That's the most important part. You don't really have to see it. It's a small thing on another Instagram, but on Dave Rubin's Instagram as well. He posted it's from End Wokeness. And in this case, we're using Mike Pence as, I think we would all agree, an establishment politician. And let's hear his comments. And this is not about whether you agree with DeSantis and Disney or not, because I can argue both sides of it. But for the purpose of arguing strength, I'll side with DeSantis in this case, just for as a thought and argumentation exercise. Okay, so just hear me out. Okay, let's play this now. Let me just turn this up as loud as I can. All right, you should be able to hear it now. Okay.
So I fully support what Florida did about protecting kids under the third grade, but I have concerns about the follow-on. Look, Disney stepped into the fray; they lost.
But then
The idea of going after their taxing authority, that was beyond the scope of what I, as a conservative, limited government Republican, would be prepared to do.
Okay, so did you understand that? I'll just play the. I'm just gonna play the end part again, so you can hear it, so you can understand what he's saying. Well, it's only 20 seconds. I can't scroll it. It's only 25 seconds. Let's listen to it again.
That did about protecting kids under the third grade, but I have concerns about the follow-on. Look, Disney stepped into the fray. They lost. But the idea of going after their taxing authority, that was beyond the scope of what I, as a conservative, limited government Republican, would be prepared to do.
Okay, so somebody's saying Pence's comments do not matter. He isn't qualified to have a voice. So Little Mermaid needs to step up and take it away. That's funny. Yes, but this is just serving as an example. Those are the people who throw hashtag leadership all the time. And this is what always frustrated me in politics, that I was always dealing with these cowards that would come up to me in the schoolyard when somebody would bully them, and they would want me, because I was the bigger kid, right? They would want me to help protect them, which I often did, but they'd be hiding in the back. Those are your politicians, right? So when it comes to actually making a decision, they will never do it. They will never make the decision. They always got to defer to some other apparatus or individual institution. This is also why you see it made me crazy. Every time a decision would have to be made politically, well, none of them want to make a decision. So they say, well, why don't we just assign a committee? So you'd have like 4 people in a group, and you'd have 10 different committees, because nobody would ever want to make a decision. That's what riding associations are like in politics. And it's so frustrating. Sonia, you have an amazing day as well. Peace, love, unity, and hope and freedom. I love you too. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you for all your kind words as always, Sonia. And it always infuriated me. So that's an example. Okay, and the antithesis, I think, is Bukele, who has told the swamp, the political establishment, their equivalent of Big Con, Canada Inc., that, no, screw yourself, we're going to do it anyways, whether you like it or not. So what has they use the term liberal response. I don't know if liberal response this is more of an activist response, maybe progressive. Let's, for the purpose, use the progressive label for them, because I do want to distinguish between the two. The progressive response, what have they been doing? They've been attacking Bukele. All of a sudden, there's all these articles written about El Salvador. They write nothing about El Salvador for the past 30 years. Obviously the Civil War, and then nothing. El Salvador can go, up S's Creek, right? They don't really care. But now they got to attack El Salvador, right? And what are they attacking Bukele for? Oh, human rights. Okay, human rights are important. There's no question. But these are the same psychopaths, the same... I'm trying to think of a good descriptor for these people who are suffering from this brain disease. Gadsad describes it in his book, The Parasitic Mind. The people who are suffering this brain disease. When it came to truckers having a peaceful protest who were feeding the homeless, bouncy castles, families hanging out for 3 weeks, merely wanting their freedoms restored, and to remove the mandates and the ArriveCan app, the data tracking app, right? We're on the side of freedom of choice. People choose what they want. When it comes to that, what was their response? Arrest them, charge them, throw them in jail, lock away the key. That was their arrest. But when you have people who sever children's heads and use them as soccer balls, it's, human rights. Like, it's a disease in their brain that they can think this way. And when I was putting this all together, I was remembering something that I've spoken about with many of you before, which is, something you learn in when you learn Cialdini's work, NLP, that sort of stuff, is that when I tell you this, that these people who demanded that peaceful truckers protesting, feeding the homeless, having dance parties, unifying the country, bringing people in Quebec and Alberta together for the first time ever, that those people should be thrown in jail. But the MS-13 18th Street gang, who tormented and tortured an entire nation for 30 years and have hundreds of thousands of victims of brutal crimes, they need their human rights. My question, do you still think people make rational decisions? There's a perfect example of how people come to their conclusions based on emotional manipulation, usually from media, and they don't make their decisions. All of us, it's a struggle for some of us sometimes, but we're all subjected. We're all, we all have the potential to do this, where we make these emotional decisions when we think we're making rational decisions. What we do is we always post-rationalize, right? We make an emotional decision, and then we post-rationalize that decision. Well, here's a perfect example, right? They've decided, they see a picture, an emotional picture of somebody be in a prison, and they identify that person emotionally as a victim. But they can't see somebody who's in the street, who's feeding homeless, and who's having the bouncy castles and the dance parties and unifying. Because that doesn't appear as a victim, then they can't get on side with them. This is this addiction to victimization from people within the progressive spheres, right? And I think that's part of the problem. But there you go. If you were going to make a rational decision on that side, then you would be able to rationalize the reason the people are in the street and the reason those people are in jail. But no, it's all superficial. It's just the visual of what they see, and they react to the stimulus. And the media knows that, and that's how it manipulates them. But moving forward on this idea, why do you think they think like this? Like, why are they so emotionally triggered in one direction, always to the victimization side? I think, and I was discussing this a little bit last night when I played a little bit of one of the videos from Stephen Hicks. Open College from Stephen Hicks, by the way, is one of the podcasts that I produce. And I've suggested many times here that people learn postmodernism. Jordan Peterson did the same in one of his first speeches at the Manning Conference, where he told everybody to read Stephen Hicks's book, Explaining Postmodernism. But postmodernism is the underlying philosophy that's fueling all these people who think this way. The oppressor versus the oppressed narrative. That's that's a large part of postmodernism. It's not all of it. So they see a person in jail in handcuffs, they react oppressed. They see somebody on the street with a big rig who's strong, not weak, and is demanding action for their government. No, that's the oppressor. When it's the opposite, and people like Krista Friedland play the game in the same direction, and it's infuriating to all of us. Her and Prime Minister Blackface, the most racist person to hold office in Canadian history, they're playing the victim card, right? You don't get to hold all the political power and also play the victim card, saying, "Oh, I'm afraid to go out. Oh, I'm scared. Oh, I'm this." I'm like, no, you control the government. You are at the reins of power. You don't get to be the victim when you're in the reins of power. It's ridiculous. And then people amongst their supporters fall for this nonsense. Why? Postmodernism. That's the underlying philosophy, right? And the worst part is they've accepted some form of Marxism or communist worldview, which is what this is. It's the collectivization of people and looking them at just merely different groups. They've accepted that philosophy, and they don't even realize it. They don't understand. And that's why when you say you jokingly stop behaving like a communist, they have no idea what you're talking about, because they have the inability to utilize observing ego to step back and say, why do I think the ways that I think I do, right? Because of YouTube, emotional porn, electics, the same reaction as sex. Maybe, perhaps. By the way, thank you for all the comments. It's very sweet of you. And the reason they accept the Marxist / Leninist or communist worldview is because they think collectively. That's why whenever you hear somebody say, oh, the greater good, run away, because that is somebody who's thinking collectively. And British common law in the Western world is based on individual rights, individualism. That's the key that has helped build our society. Individual rights and property rights, bodily autonomy, those are the things that have built our society. Miss Cheryl, I love listening to you, BJ. Well, I don't know. I'm just rambling on. I'm just here having coffee. How's your coffee, by the way? Is everybody enjoying their coffee? All right. So, and so they think collectively. Now, why is that? I mean, obviously that's a problem, but what's the big danger of this? And I'm getting into why, the people on the progressive side, why do they support these murderous thugs that rape and torture and murdered an entire country for 3 decades? Because what they do, because they think collectively, and they think, blue skies, I think is the term you hear from, and I'm starting to hear conservatives use this term, blue skies, these communist terminology. There's your political entryism for you. What it does is it strips people of their agency, because like my dad was a teacher, and I remember learning about this growing up, what was happening to education when they started to erode away education in Canada in the late 80s. What they do is they strip people of their agency, and they say, well, it's not the MS-13 guys. It's not the individual, because, again, they don't believe in individualism. They're collectivists. They're a segment of the population that behaves this way because of the environment that they've grown up with. It's not their fault. It's what they've been subjected to that's made them that way. If you're an individualist like me and a rational thinker, as I try to be, that's complete horseshit, right? This is what Thomas Sowell is great at. Somebody grew up in Harlem during those difficult years in New York. It was not a great place to grow up. But you know what? He's an individualist, and he built his life based on his circumstances, and he got himself out of negative circumstances. But the communists don't believe that that's the way, or the Marxists don't believe that's the way. It's the society that governs how people behave. And so we have to change the society to make things better. So we can't have police anymore, right? Because if you have police, that ends up in them being arrested. And these people don't have agency. But if we get rid of the police, then they won't get arrested anymore. Then they're going to be encouraged to do more positivity. It's like the fact that they don't understand the basics of motivation of human behavior is shocking. But they're kind of morons. Because only a moron would fall for this communist stuff, right? But everything is not the individual's fault. Everything's the society's fault. It's the postmodern oppressor versus oppressed vision, collectivism, and Marxist frames that allow these people to think this way, and they don't even understand it. They don't understand what has fueled their own underlying ideology, which is very dangerous, right? To call oneself a Marxist in 2023 is laughable. What happened to free thinking? Listen, I'm preaching to the choir. And in the case of, by the way, in the case of Lenin and Mao, how did Lenin and Mao take over first Russia, and then Mao basically carbon copied the same approach? They empowered the degenerates, and they prosecuted the working class, the middle class, the educated and professional academic classes. Those are the ones who were targeted, but they empowered criminals and murderers, and that's how they took over the society. Well, they're doing the same thing here. It's the same underlying ideology, but they don't know it. They don't understand it, right? Because they're not looking things from a broad philosophical standpoint. And that's also why this is all political. All of this stuff. These are just political tactics that are being used. And we are now living in the postmodern age. That's what's fueling all this stuff. And that's how you get somebody who is claims to be for the little guy, the underprivileged, the poor people who are being murdered by these people, by this trash, by this gang trash, and they side with the gang trash, right? Because it's not their fault. It's very dangerous, and you should really call people out how they're like that. By the way, wait, hold on. The environment people are in, has a huge impact on a person and how they act. A larger discussion for another time. I'm glad you said a larger discussion for another time, because Tao, I can argue both sides. I understand what you're getting at, but it's one of those philosophical questions that, is there a right answer? Kinda no, kinda yes, kinda sort of, right? Life is not binary, it's not black and white, it's not simple. And often individual circumstances are different. That's why we need to focus on individualism. The individual environment has an effect on people. But to blame all of society on how people behave, that I can't get behind. We live in, he quotes, it depends. I agree. We're going to have lots of good debates. But anyways, so how did people get this way? And this goes back to my earlier question. Do you still think people make rational decisions, or do we make our decisions emotionally? Did they get there on their own, do you think? Do you think people just woke up and decided, oh, hey, it's my philosophy, my worldview is collectivist, and that's how I'm going to look at the world? No, because we're all primed for our ideas, all of us. And we have primers throughout our lives, and this could be interpreted as something on to support Tao's argument, which I get, that we're all primed based on all these data points we have all throughout our lives to have certain opinions and certain worldviews. But that doesn't excuse the individual of criminal behavior, in my opinion, right? Let's say violent criminal behavior, right? Hey, Joe Rampart's here. 80-20 for most. Either way, it sways based on emotions. Okay, I'd accept that. I'd accept that, brother. And I think all of this, the fact that we are all primed to have our opinions, and we don't understand that. We all think we make rational decisions. Coupled with the entryism of postmodernism and this Marxist collectivist worldview, all of that packaged together is why we have the problems in our world that we have today. Our cultural problems, the discourse online and whatever. And the word we give it is progressive, which is the opposite of the definition of the word progressive. And the reason they're so aggressive in attacking and smearing Bukele now is because he's the antidote. He's the pushback. He went into the hornet's nest of Latin America, where people tend to be more collectivist. I'll talk about that another time. Something you realize when you live in Latin America long enough, you see it. But Bukele, in the hornet's nest, comes up. He challenges the swamp. He takes over. He becomes leader. It was a very long, grueling exercise for him. It took him many, many years. And then he went full sledgehammer on everything that was destroying their country. And those things, they're rooted in the philosophy of postmodernism, collectivism, Marxism, the progressives, if you will. And the political class was doing nothing, because the political class, and this is what we're starting to have in Canada, is just cares about serving itself. And by serving itself, serving lobby firms. I've mentioned many times some of the lobby firms in Canadian politics that are linked to all the parties they're linked to. And that's where the issue is. So El Salvador is a beacon of hope, and that's I understand my friends who are on the libertarian side would argue, there's never an excuse for a government to take such extreme measures. And this is why, no ideology is always 100% correct. Never say never. There's always an extenuating circumstance. And when, in the case of El Salvador, when living in El Salvador was tantamount to living in a prison for 30 years, you had to do something. And Bukele has shown the light of strength to politicians all over the world and has made them all look useless. And Canada and America right now are going in the wrong direction. Canada and the United States. I say America because my American friends love when I say America. And some of my American friends are so patriotic, but the same guys who put Canadian flags up during the convoy, which is why that was so significant for me that they did. So there you go. I think I could talk I could talk about this for hours, but I'm not going to. I think that's why El Salvador is so interesting for so many of us. And what's interesting is to see people in the Bitcoin community have gone down. So many have moved to El Salvador because places like El Zonte and other jurisdictions where it's used frequently, it's now legal tender in the country. And I love Bitcoin because Bitcoin has people from all aspects of the political spectrum, much like the Freedom Convoy did. And that's why I'm trying to be nice, despite my opinions here, right? Well, it's not that I'm not being nice, but I tried to be nice and courteous to my friends who are liberals, who are still liberal, and want to engage with them, because I saw how amazing that was during the Freedom Convoy. That, yeah, we can disagree, we can all vote for our own different parties, but we all need to talk to each other. And that's what happens in Bitcoin, and that's also what I'm hoping is going to happen more frequently in the Discord server. And for those of you who want to join who haven't joined yet, send me a request. I'll send you a link. We're bringing people in slowly because we want to ensure that it maintains a level of decorum, because what we want to do is the equivalent of like Twitter Spaces, but we want to do them visually in video so we can all see each other and talk to each other and all that sort of stuff. I think that Tao really came up with that suggestion, and I'm forever grateful. And I know Tao would probably take issue with some of my perspectives and would want, but he's one of those people who wants to debate and talk, and I love that, and I thank you for that. And the more we all start to do that together, the less power the political swamp is going to have. And once the political swamp has less power, you know what they have to do? They have to come to us. And that'll take some time. So, Colombia is the best film. Let's stream it together one night. Town Revolution. Oh, ¿conoces a Colombia? ¿Estás en Colombia? ¿En qué parte de Colombia? I know Colombia very well, and I miss it quite a lot. And I'd like to go to Colombia and then hop a flight and go to El Salvador and come back sometime in April if I can. I just don't know if I can figure out the time to make that work. But if any of you do go to Latin America, like Risa, if you're still here, let me know. It'd be good if we can coordinate. So that's it for my rant. I hope that explains kind of the importance of El Salvador in terms of the geopolitical framework today. We will be doing the space tonight in Spanish. I will do my best to avoid Spanglish. And no matter how many grammatic errors, I'd rather do that in Spanish than flip over to English. I always find that issue. Tao says, "We'll take issues probably too." You know what I mean? Yeah. No, I know. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but I know I'm well researched. Listen, agreed. So, we should do, Tao, at some point. We should maybe look at. I like Hicks because he's very critical of conservatives. And he's very critical of liberals on certain issues, and he doesn't like labels for himself. Like, he's the ultimate individualist. Maybe one of the first events we should do in the Discord is we can watch a short presentation from Stephen Hicks at some point, and then talk about it and debate it, and talk about our different perspectives. That sort of thing would be good, and simultaneously put it on Twitter Spaces or something else. But maybe let me know if you like that idea, and we'll think about if that's the first thing we should do as a broadcast in Discord. So anyways, I think that's it for today, and for everybody else. Andrea, estás aquí esta noche por las 7 en Twitter, el espacio, sobre Bitcoin, El Salvador y el convoy de libertad en Canadá, en lo que pasa allá, y todas las cosas y el futuro para hacer, para reparar los países y esas cosas. Hablamos en eso esta noche. That's some friends are coming in here. Somebody's here on my Instagram who speaks Spanish. Entonces, ¿yo hablo mejor ahora o peor de antes? Dime. You know who you are. Okay, that's it. I'm going to cut it from there. Last thing I'll just remind you, now available on Apple Books. So if you go to honkingforfreedom.com, you can get it on Amazon, Etsy, Kobo, and Apple Books. Some promos will be coming out, I think, in the next day or so anyways. And for those of you who have asked about the audiobook, because I know Zinc asked specifically about it, I'm going to try to line that up with either the Bitcoin Canada conference, release it around the same time, or this massive music festival in New England that I'll be participating in. 4-day music festival. This year. You'll want to be there. We're going to have a lot of truckers there. We're going to have a lot of Bitcoiners there. We're going to have a lot of people who don't care about politics and just want to dance and celebrate freedom and be together in the warm weather in the sun and have an epic party. And I hope you can all be there if you can. And it'll be in the Northeast. I'll let you know when. Soon, I think they'll be rolling out some of the marketing materials and doing the promos, and you'll see the promos on my platforms as well. Can I catch a ride, BJ? Maybe. I don't know if I'm going to be. The problem is, to one of the logistics things I got to talk to them about is they want to bring some trucks down there, so I can get. I've spoken to Bridget and some of the others. We can get 150 to maybe 200 trucks on site in the facility that they have, because they have a massive parking lot. But we need to drop the trailers. So we need to find somebody who has a farm in kind of rural areas where we can drop the trailers for a couple of days and then bring the trucks in. Because I want it to be that all of you can, go to the dance party, have some drinks, get some food, do your stuff. Think of like Burning Man, like a Burning Man festival, but in the Northeast, and celebrating freedom, Bitcoin, truckers, everything that we stand up for, right? And it's not politically partisan. So everybody from all sides of politics are welcome there, just to bring us all together. So I'd love people to have the option or the ability to, the opportunity to talk directly with some of your truckers, American or Canadian truckers. Ask them what it's like on the road. Talk to them about Bitcoin. They can talk to you about their experiences, because some of them have some very interesting lives. A lot of people in trucking are veterans, so they have some interesting stories as well. But I think it'll be amazing, and I'm going to talk more and more about this leading up to the event, which will be the end of June after Bitcoin Canada, which will be held in Toronto. Okay, and I also just found out, for those of you who are Bitcoiners who are watching, BTC Sessions will also be a keynote speaker at Bitcoin Canada, so it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to see him again. Ben is a super cool dude. I quite like him. And a perfect example of people who we've all lived in different spaces on the political spectrum, and we're all kind of coming together around freedom and respect for one another, and not allow us to be, divide and conquer by the swamp and the political class. Okay, so Cheryl, I don't know. I got to find out if I'm gonna, because I'd have to take my truck, go down to do a delivery, leave the trailer close. It can't be all that far, so I have to leave the trailer somewhere rural, bring my truck to the event, and then at the end of the event, go back to the trailer and come back, do a delivery, and then come back. In a perfect world, that's what I would do. So we'll talk. Or maybe a bunch of you from Toronto can get together and either rent a car, because we're only looking about maybe 8 hours away. It's not going to be all that far. I mean, that's everything in that area is about 8 hours, whether it's Newark or Rhode Island or Boston. Like all those areas are close to one another, and they're all within 8 hours. So we're not talking about a massive trek anyways. But all of us will talk, and that's a good thing to pose in the Discord. How awesome would that be if people in the Discord found each other and decided to take a road trip together to go to the music festival? Isn't that awesome? And I'm going to be doing something very special at that music festival that people are going to think like, huh? A little crazy, but it should be lots of fun. So I promise it'll be entertaining. Okay. Haul a trailer full of people, problem solved. Yeah, I think there's a word for that. I think that's called trafficking. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's one of the things they ask you when you cross the border is they say, did you stay overnight at a truck stop? Because what happens, and I think this has been reduced, by the way, since S19 and, MS-13 and the 18th Street Gang, whatever, they were big, they were added to this problem for sure. But the cartels are doing this with the coyotes. What they do is I cross the border and they say, did you stay at a truck stop? And I hardly ever do. And they say, okay. And I asked them one time why. And the border agent said, because what they're doing, the coyotes, is you have a bolt on the, a seal on the trailer once it's loaded. And it's basically a metal bolt with a cap on it and a serial number, and you can't pull it apart. You just have to break it. It's a one-time use seal. So what they do is they actually break it when you're asleep in your cab in the truck stops. They load people in the trailer when you're asleep, and then they have somebody with a TIG welder who welds it back and then polishes it and smooths it out. So it's hard to tell that it's been cut, and that's one of the ways they're trying to smuggle people in and out of the United States. So, yeah, I don't know if I'd put people in my trailer, to be entirely honest, but that is funny. That is funny. Okay, I got to run, and I love you all. Thank you, everybody. Again, was this negative? I don't know. We're talking about geopolitics. I think it's positive because we're seeing signs of hope. Look, El Salvador, for the first time this year, has had several nights with not one murder. They used to have 33 murders a day. It was crazy. And so I think they're on the right path. And that shows a template of what I told our political leaders. I said, you need one thing. You need to show one thing, strength, the ability to say no, and let people smear you and attack you, and don't back down. But that was too much to ask from our #leadership class. But hopefully they will realize that that's the path forward, and I hope Bukele is helping to show them that. Avril, learning as always is positive. Agreed, and thank you all for being here. You guys are all awesome. Wowzers, that is crazy. Great information, and have a great day and weekend, everyone, from I'm No DJ Productions. And Andrea, esta noche por las 7. Well, por las 7 acá, por la noche in Chile. Chile, not Chile, right? We'll see you on Twitter tonight, 7 o'clock, and do a little bit of Spanish until my brain starts to hurt, which is usually, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes, and my brain starts to hurt of too much Spanish, but I'll do my best. Thank you, everybody. K9, love you as always. Thank you for all your amazing research, and there's lots more coming down the pipeline. Okay, I got to run.